Hi, my name is Bill. This is the second part of the third section of what I think is of importance that I've learned. The first part of this section was about a core foundation and how important it is. I mentioned when the world comes shattering down around you because you were ill prepared for what the world has to offer in the form of death and pain and suffering, betrayal, you name it, whatever it might be. It is important to have a strong foundation, something to fall back on. As your house crumbles around you, it's good to have something strong like a foundation to say, no, this is it. I can clear the house and build again. Build my knowledge, build what I know. A lot of people go through it at one point or another in their lives. I went through it. I thought it was important. This time, this little second section, I'm going to talk about my foundation and where it came from and how it has helped me mostly to overcome those particular earth-shattering events. When I was younger, 16, I was raised Pentecostal, and I basically spent a few years trying to learn the best I can to be a good little Christian boy. Didn't work out so well. I'm one of those inquisitive, skeptical individuals that keeps asking questions until I get answers. The kind of kid you would push away because I asked too many stupid questions that you would think, but that was me. In the end, I was more confused than not. I sought answers. And I got a few, but not really a solid foundation. But I read a book about religion. A story about Socrates. Socrates was living in a time that you had to believe in all of the Greek gods. That was a must. If you didn't, you were killed as a heretic. One of his students, who apparently didn't like him too much, knew that Socrates had an affinity for this idea of a one God, which came from about a century before from the Israelites and the Jewish people of what we currently call Palestine and Israel. Well, this student, trying to get to Socrates, asked Socrates what he believed when the topic of the gods came up. He said three simple things, three propositions, which I really, really liked. He said, I believe in the God that created me. I believe in the immortality of the soul or spirit. He believed in divine inspiration, which guided him. Now, all these precepts, these propositions, hit me because they were in fact what I believed. And I never considered it. I thought it was a general assumption. Yeah, this is true. How can it not be true? And as a result, I used that as a foundation. Now, I never thought about it in terms of a foundation. I thought about it in terms of just who I am, what I believed. You know, it's one thing to say, oh, I believe in heaven and hell, I believe in God, I believe in this, I believe in that. But to say definitively, this is something that not as I believed, but I knew. I knew there was a God that created me. I knew in the immortality of my soul. And I knew that there was divine inspiration which guided me. So it wasn't a belief at this point, it was knowledge. And it was my foundation, even though I didn't quite understand what that meant. Didn't even realize that's what it was. And so I started learning and studying, reading. I used most of my problems as a means of becoming more aware of my surroundings and coming up with solutions. I found my problems were a path to learning deeper truths. Why did this problem happen? Why did I respond to this a certain way? How to respond properly, and that led me down a certain path. Well, years later, after reading, I came across someone else. If you're familiar with philosophy, Rene Descartes made a very famous proposition most of us all know about, even though some of us probably don't know who originated it. And his proposition is the truest thing there is that I can think of, the most certain thing we know. But I only heard it. I thought it was a good idea, but that was it. But as I read Rene Descartes, and I learned he was the one that originated this particular proposition, and read how he came up with it. In short, he didn't study philosophy exactly. It was a hobby for him. He didn't really pay much mind or serious thought to the various philosophers of the past. He just took the topic of philosophy and went with it. And he came up with the fundamental certainty that we all should, I think, accept if we are thinking beings. I think, therefore I am. I know we all have heard it. It's made it on t-shirts and mugs and posters. This is a given, I think. Once I heard that and I learned of the origin of it, I basically took that to heart. And I applied that with what I learned with the 3 propositions from the story from Plato about Socrates. And that was, without me really knowing it, my foundation. That was what everything else was built on. Now, I went through a series of different stages where I thought I knew things or believed things, and then learned later that they were wrong, and I kind of fine-tuned what I've learned, but I've always had that as a foundation, and that's never changed. I could always fall back to that one point and then reconsider. So everything, consider portions of my knowledge that I found to be wrong, I could always fall back to those founding principles of my foundation, the core knowledge, and I built on it. Now, for me, that was everything. Anytime something happened, I could always fall back. When I lost my job, which happened a few times, when someone broke my heart, when someone died, I always fell back to that and found my solution, got stable. I wasn't vulnerable, if this is probably the best way to put it. And that worked for me. But I realized that everybody has that particular experience as I have had. Whereas I think Descartes' proposition affects most people who think, and I'm assuming you think yourself, therefore you should exist. If you don't think, you probably don't exist, but it doesn't really matter because you're not thinking. You're just maybe something else, I don't know. But if you're thinking right now, you exist. We all have that. Aside from that, we have to really question what else is there. I will speak on a certain degree about certainty and doubt. And put simply, if you're 90% certain of something, then you have 10% of doubt about it. And when I talk about the propositions from Socrates about the one God that created me, immortality of the soul, and divine inspiration, there's a doubt there. There's a certain degree of doubt. There's like percentage of doubt. But it's not enough to really make me waver. For everyone else, those propositions might not apply. And that's the second part that I'm going to touch upon. The second part is about you. What do you believe? What is your background? I will recount a story, and I may have to do a third part on this. But I was talking to a friend of mine, and his background was he was very well educated. He had a 4-year degree, which I, of course, don't. We worked together for 3 years. He was the first really intelligent person I had an encounter with. And quite honestly, he won most every argument we got into at the beginning. Near the end, I was winning my share of the arguments. I say argument in a classical sense, a good, intelligent conversation, if you will. Well, we talked a lot, and through talking to him, we went to lunch, checked out some movies. Through the process, I learned that he was gay. I learned that he was an atheist. I learned a lot about him. He was a good guy, very intelligent, and we spent quite a few hours of time just talking about things. Before he finally moved on, got another job, we had one conversation that really hit me hard. One thing I learned about him was he was very introspective, very open-minded. He was very easy to talk to, and he listened intently. I believed 100% that he knew who he was. He knew what he was. And as a result, he said that he didn't believe in God. And I was like, for the first time, I said, okay, he doesn't believe in God. So I tried to fish a little bit and find out the reason. So I thought maybe not having a soul might do it. So I asked, I said, do you think you have a soul? And he says, of course not, I don't have a soul. And when he said this, a few things lined up. He didn't have a soul. I believed what he was saying. And therefore, because he didn't have a soul, or didn't think or know he had a soul, or he didn't have a soul as he believed it, then he didn't believe in God, which was perfect sense. It's like dominoes. To believe in God, you got to believe in something other than the body. And if you believe in a spirit, then you have to kind of believe in something that made that. Because the humans made bodies. Therefore, if he didn't believe in a soul, he must believe that there's no God. And so I gave him the proposition. Well, what do you think of this? What if I said, you don't have a soul, you don't believe in God, you don't have a soul, but what about the possibility that maybe some people do have souls? So when they say they believe in God, they have some foundation or some evidence to suggest that yes, they do actually have a reason to believe in God. And he didn't say I was right, but he said that's an interesting point I never considered, and I never considered it either. So I'll end this video with this one idea that I believe true. There are people in the world that don't have souls, and therefore, if you don't have a soul, then the only thing that you are is a physical body, and you will fade to black, and that's all there is, because you don't have a soul. Only people that actually have souls would have any sort of experience in believing there's a God. So for my next video on this same topic, which is extended way too long, I'm going to say this. There's a lot of options available for anybody to formulate what their core belief is. Descartes' proposition, I think, is a given to most thinking beings. Anything else, I think, is up to you. But there are options. There are things you need to consider and things you need to embrace. With that, I'll end it. And hopefully you find this interesting. But this conversation with this gentleman was very enlightening, and it changed my way of thinking. So I asked you, if you're interested in further, listen to the next video. I can tell you the various options I've determined to be valid for a foundation. And of course they are limited, and I am a fool for even trying to mention it to you. You probably already know. But I'll leave it with this. Always be better today than you were yesterday.